Welcome to the Rainy Days Mystery Quilt. This is clue number 4 for the summer of 2022. The rule for cutting is measure twice, cut once. Let's get started. From the dark accent, cut 2 strips that are 2.5 inches by the width of fabric. From those 2 strips, you will cut 24 squares that measure 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. We hope you'll hit that like button to let us know that you found clue number 4, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch all of the future clues. From 20 of the charm squares, cut 80 squares 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. To save a little time, I'm going to cut through 5 layers at once, so I'm just going to stack my squares and cut them all at the same time. After I make the first cut, I always check to make sure the other side hasn't shifted, and I just make the adjustments as I need to. If you're doing a Scrappy version, these squares could also be cut from 2.5-inch strips. While we have these squares on the cutting table, get your Pile C bag out and match up the squares that you just cut to the pairs of rectangles in the bag. Each set of 2 rectangles needs 4 squares. I like to do this step before I head to the sewing machine to prevent seam ripper opportunities later. It's easier to switch things around now before they are sewn together. All you need is some contrast between the squares and the rectangles. Sometimes it takes a little while to find the color combination that I like, and sometimes when I get to the last few squares that are left, I have to rearrange a few that I've already done, but this way I don't have to get my seam ripper out later because I've done it ahead of time. From the sashing fabric, cut 2 strips that are 14.5 inches by the width of fabric. From these strips, cut 24 rectangles, 2.5 inches by 14.5 inches. If I have to make a cut that is wider than my ruler, I will combine 2 rulers to make that cut, or I will get out my large square and use that instead. Do not attempt to get these 2.5-inch by 14.5-inch rectangles from 2.5-inch strips instead of the 14.5-inch strips. You will not have enough fabric. And yes, I do know that from experience. I'm also working on my other colorway, which has the blues and the greens and the browns and the blacks. It's turning out really cool. For this version, I'm using a sashing fabric that is the same color as my background, and I think that's going to have a neat effect. It's time to sew. Make sure you're using 1/4-inch seam allowances. Piece matching 2.5-inch squares on each end of matching 2.5-inch by 4.5-inch rectangles. There will be 40 total units, 20 matching pairs. To start, I'm just going to sew 1 square to each rectangle, and I'm going to go through the whole pile that way, setting aside the extra 2 squares. Keep the pile of the extra 2 squares in order as you send the fabrics through the machine. Once you get to the end of the pile, find the first two pieces that you sent through the machine. Everything's chain stitched together, so it should all be attached to each other. And then you're going to flip over the pile of squares and cut the first two off. And there should be those pieces that you need to sew onto the other side of the rectangle. It will all be in order as you sent it through the machine. The next two pieces on the square pile should match the two pieces that you cut off the end, and then you can just keep going until you get to the end of the squares pile. I like to use this technique because it keeps everything neat and tidy and easy to find. Once you have the squares on both sides of the 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch rectangles, get your blade saver thread cutter out and cut those units apart. Before I head over to the ironing board, I'm also going to piece the accent 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch squares on one end of the 2.5 inch by 14.5 inch rectangles. I'm making some progress with my second colorway too. I'm going to keep going, sew all those up so that I can do all the pressing at once. It's time to press. For this clue, you're going to press toward the rectangles. You can press either from the front side or the back side. For the smaller rectangle pieces, I like to press from the back side because I can grab both of those seams at the same time. Once you're done pressing, you can put all of these pieces back in the C pile bag. And then you want to put any fabric left over from cutting and the C bag in with your A and B bag and put it all together in one spot with the patterns. I have both of my colorways done and I'm tucking them away to keep them safe for the next clue. You can find this pattern to print in the files section of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends, or push pause and take notes, or you can screenshot it and print it from home. We hope you remembered to hit that like button, make a comment, share with your quilting friends, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!